All right, everybody, we are live again. Dynasty Mirror Search for Uhuru. And I have with me today, this Friday afternoon, yes, 12:30 afternoon, Miss Jackie Johnson. And today's topic is, does the African Union support reparations for Black Americans? Now, Miss Jackie, you were actually at the HR 40. In fact, introduce yourself before we get started.
Hey, everybody, you know me, Jackie Johnson of Profile Africa Worldwide. And it's always good to join Dynast and to share with you just some things that's going on around hot topics around the African American and Africa agenda. Yeah, last week I was at the HR 40 hearing in Washington, D.C. at the congressional hearing. And it touched on some good points of things
Mm-hmm.
that we really need to stand for. And then they missed the mark in many places as well. So we just kind of want to talk about that and
Uh-huh.
some of the new movements around what not only reparation is, but more importantly, what we need to be doing as a collective in order to get reparations and what that reality is. Um, and just some things that I think that the AU could pitch up on
Mm-hmm.
to assist us for
Real
sure.
quick, are you familiar with the AU extension? Are you familiar with that?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, but go ahead and if you want to do a recap of the actual HR 40 um,
Yeah,
meeting
I mean,
panel.
basically, the HR 40 is more around a request from Congress to do a study on the effects of reparations and then how to cure some of those challenges. And I just want to say that there's no quick fix to this, and not to say that it won't happen in our lifetime. I actually believe that it will, but I also believe that it's not going to happen if we're not going to be a united front. And I just want to read some of the things that we're pushing for. Well, first of all, I will say that we need to have a national African American coalition
Mm-hmm.
because it's just not going to happen if we're operating in fragmented silos. It's just not going to happen. And that's the real truth. We have to figure out a way, seriously, to lay down our sword and unite around the issue of obtaining reparations. If we don't do that, 2, 3 generations from now, we'll still be talking about getting
All right.
reparations.
Let me ask you this. So there's several. I guess you have Cobra,
Mm-hmm.
you have ADOS movement
Mm-hmm.
with Yvette and Tone Talks. You have all these different reparations movement, and now this group wants to take credit for the panel, and this group wants to take credit. Like, who should we rally behind, Jackie, or should they all these groups come together?
Yes, that's very good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what happened after the session, which was totally amazing, and I will give some of the even Republican congressional leaders credit for really hearing the concerns and what we believe slavery did to us,
Mm-hmm.
and what we believe is a valid recompense back to us. I
Mm-hmm.
do give credit for the congressional leaders that took the time to listen intensely and to actually care. And sometimes that kind of thing gets lost in the
Mm-hmm.
media. That if you're not sitting there in the room, or you're not able to talk to these congressional leaders on the hall, in halls of Congress after events like this, oftentimes you feel like your voice wasn't really heard. They just went through the motions and things like that. But this is really an issue that won't just be a 2020 presidential campaign
Mm-hmm.
issue. It really will be an ongoing issue in the African American community until it actually happens. So after the congressional hearing, there was like a forum held at the famous African Methodist church in Washington, D.C. And a kind of a conversation and rally was put around this right here called the National African American Reparations Commission. And this is what a lot of leaders are choosing to be the national voice
Mm-hmm.
for African Americans on the issue of reparations. And it is a body
Mm-hmm.
of these organizations, like what you mentioned, and others that will continue to hold forums and create agendas to go back to Congress and add some more bills. It's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be just HR 40, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be HR 89 and 99 to continue unpacking what we really want. And so I want to read what these 10 points are so that we can understand on a national level, because everything has to happen nationally. And that means bringing everybody together, deciding that we're going to lay our swords down against one another and commit to some united effort towards getting reparations. All right, so the 10 points are: number one, a formal apology. And not just, let me just say this before I read this, that this may not be the final 10-point agenda. We already know everybody's not going to agree on that agenda. So what we're trying to do is cover as much of what we commonly believe is necessary. Okay? So the first one is a formal apology and establishment of an African Holocaust Institute. And the reason being is because we did experience a Holocaust.
Right.
We did experience, I call it reparations gate. We
Mm-hmm.
need that. And we did experience African genocide in terms of what all slavery did to our community as a body of people. And so then the second thing is the right of reparations and creation of an African knowledge program. So many people don't know even what reparations is. If we took a poll, you and I, and just walked out the street on Peachtree Street,
right,
and just asked every Black person on Peachtree Street in Atlanta, the home of the civil rights movement,
right,
what is reparations?
Right. No one would know.
They wouldn't know. And that's very sad. So how can we unite the general population of African Americans who don't even know what reparations is? So we do need that. The second thing is the right to land for social and economic development. I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel about that particular point?
Don't we already have the right to?
The right to land for social and economic development.
Oh, like our own land.
Yeah.
Well, it's owed to us.
Yeah.
We
Well,
were promised 40 acres in a mule, and they were nigged on it. So absolutely.
Right. So we never got that. And that means that we don't have the ability to create centers
Mm-hmm.
of development from teaching people life skills. Because I'm going to tell you.
Let me ask you this real quick. Sorry to cut you off. Who will? Okay, so say we go with this. Who will cut the check? I mean, who will oversee the spending for, we'll say, to create these institutions? Like, who will oversee that?
I think the commission would. And the commission will be made up of some of these key people, also economists,
Right.
people that's already in the game of development across certain aspects of what we need.
Okay.
And then I also think that some of these things get worked out as we come together. We won't have all, in the existing body of the National African American Reparations Commission, I don't believe that they have all the answers. Some of it is missing pieces that come when the right people show up and partner with us and become a part of that collective voice.
I just want to make sure whoever is head of the committee, that whatever funds are distributed, that they direct them to where they're supposed to go.
Absolutely. And then, so when we talk about the right to land for social and economic development, hey, everybody, have you checked out the amount of the rise of homelessness,
especially in LA,
DC, Atlanta? It's painful, guys. I honestly, I'm serious. There are people that I literally remember leaving on the streets of Atlanta in 2009
That
And
you knew personally.
that I had seen so
Mhm,
much. You know
mhm.
what I'm saying? Walking down Peachtree Street.
Mhm.
I remember seeing certain homeless people in 2009 before I really started my lengthy time in South Africa. And what is painful that in 2019,
Mhm.
10 years later,
Yeah.
those people are still there. Those
Oh,
same people, Dinus,
wow.
are still there. And they're there in a more decrepit way. You know what I mean?
The drug usage,
Well,
mental
not
issues.
only that, health, mental issues is really big and being ignored in the African American community. When you look at what happened on the news here a day or two ago, where this homeless guy was sleeping in his car and the police stopped him
Hmm.
and went up to the car and asked for his ID and everything, and he had all of his belongings. Now he's just being awakened out of sleep.
Right.
So I don't know about other people, but don't wake me up out of my sleep and think I'm going to jump on my feet and be instantly in my right mind.
Right.
I tell everybody I have a good 30 minutes of disorientation, and I hate to be caught off guard, awakened out of my sleep. So that's what happened to him. And he was afraid because the police started saying he was loitering.
Right.
So then they wanted his ID. He didn't understand what was going on. He started driving away. They started chasing him.
Okay.
And then the police officer shot him in the head.
Oh, wow.
This happened in Georgia, and I was just
When?
thinking, 2 days ago.
Where at?
Ellen, Georgia, or somewhere, but it's in the metro Atlanta geography.
Okay.
And what is scary is how they criminalize homelessness when it's a Black person.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And as a result of that, homelessness in America, from DC to Atlanta, Chicago, LA, the people that are homeless today is a deeper depth of kind of homelessness,
Right,
to
absolutely.
the point of literal physical incapacitation where they're unable to walk physically. Their limbs are decaying and all kinds of things are going on. And it's because mayors and even Black mayors of Atlanta, Black mayors of America, is sweeping homelessness under the rug. And we've got to call these people on the carpet about this kind of
The
thing.
Black caucus in general. I'm gonna call them out. Black caucus, the carcass, the Black carcass.
Right, it's just becoming really insane, honestly. Like, if we care about the Hispanic community and what's going on with them at the border, and we're not caring about Black people and what is happening to our people on the streets, it is unacceptable.
Right.
I mean, totally unacceptable. And it's the thing that really riles
And it was crazy.
me.
I guarantee you, this weekend you're gonna have at the Essence Festival, they're gonna be up there running their mouths about how much you're gonna do for the Black community and Trump this and Trump that, and nothing will get done. So, oh well.
And we just gotta understand, guys, that they're just, we're gonna get back to reparations, but we really still do need to deal with our own internal issues as a community. And part of that means understanding what not only homelessness does to the African American community, but broken families. I really just have to keep sounding the alarm. You really need to grab a hold to what the Hispanic community is doing and achieving by working together every day. Just do your own personal survey and see, when you see a Hispanic person, how many are there of them together. They're working together. They're driving together. They eat together. They sleep together. They live together. They pull their resources together. And so if that happening quietly a good 10 years in America has toppled in 10 years anything that we could have thought we were doing as African Americans. They are now, population wise, the number one minority. They are economically the number one minority. They have outpaced us in jobs and all kinds of things. When you see Hispanic people collectively working at hotels, because I travel a lot and I'm in and out of very nice hotels to 3 stars, whatever's available sometimes. And everywhere I turn, there are Hispanic people cleaning the rooms, serving the food. That means a Hispanic company has literally gotten a cleaning contract.
Not necessarily.
Oftentimes,
Sometimes it's not necessarily a Hispanic company. They just hire Hispanics because it's cheap labor.
well, that even being said,
Mhm.
it's still a collective of people. And most of the time, those people live together, they ride
Mhm.
together. And one thing I see about them, that they love each other. They
Mhm.
always hugging.
Mhm.
They always talking about how you doing. They are together, and that togetherness moves things. When we witnessed last week the presidential debate amongst the Democrats start speaking Spanish,
Right.
that was starting to tell us as a people where their agenda is going in terms of the
But
minorities.
what upsets me and pisses me off, Jackie. You have these so-called black political educated pundits who get on TV every day,
Mhm.
and their agenda is just to replace Trump. That's it. No matter what, just replace Trump. And there's no real agenda, or they don't want anything tangible for the black community.
Right.
So that's why I'm just kind of like, I'm over it.
Yeah.
But I mean,
But that and then I still say we have to, and that's okay, that's a good point, because I'm going to tell you that the commission, they've come to me and said, look, we want to talk to Congress more. We want to have a deeper dialogue than what happened on Juneteenth, which is another issue we'll talk about before we get off air. And then we want to talk to the AU. But yes, they want to talk to the Congressional Black Caucus
mhm.
about these
About what?
issues.
I'm so done with that.
I know, but we
Have you?
have
Let me
to.
ask you. Have you read their objective before?
Who, the Black Caucus?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it says the focus on the black community and other marginalized people.
Okay, yeah,
So
and
it's
we
so
want to talk
and
about that too. We want to
that's a
stop.
problem because everybody else is just focused on them,
Right.
but the black caucus is us and them,
Right.
and that's a problem.
And we want to stop that. I personally take offense to people of color. I am not a person of color. I am a black person who have black issues every single day.
Mm.
So I don't want brown people, yellow people, anybody that's not black being at the forefront of what we need done. Mainly too because these other communities do have forerunning agendas that they push and people support their things. But who cares about us exclusively? When we look at what is really happening in the black community, we've got to bring our leaders to a state of exclusive consciousness on us and what matters to us, what our issues are, and where you're going to bring the solutions. Otherwise, hey, everybody gets to advance and off of the sweat of our brow what we worked for and what strides we made as a community, that somehow our message and our issues get lost, and that's just not cool.
Mm-hmm. Guys, let's hit that like button. We have 164 people watching, only 46 likes. Again, just hit the like button. It's free. Doesn't cost you anything. Just hit the like button. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, and we cannot be grouped all together, even as it pertains to being an African American. And as much as the AU has put out a call for the diaspora to return home, we have to be realistic and honest about the fact that there are two kinds of diasporans here in the diaspora. There's the African immigrant, and then there's the descendant of Africa, which is the larger population. And descendants don't have the same privileges, even right here in the US, as immigrant Africans do.
Can you
And
go into detail on that?
well, like an immigrant is an immigrant, no matter where they came from in the world into the United States. So there are benefits that they get. There's assistance that they get for education. There's support that they get for housing and just different things that help them into the U.S. and into the workforce and into the educational environment from the university system, etc. So they get a leg up coming into America. Do we get that same leg up going into Africa, or do we get that same leg up being here as descendants
But
of
I mean,
Africa in the
just
United
when you look
States?
at our leader, so-called leadership, it's as if they don't want us to get the leg up. They want these other groups to. the people who are supposed to represent us, and I use that loosely, especially the Black Caucus. They need to just throw that whole organization away.
But then I say you need to come to DC and be a part of those conversations and bringing a greater consciousness to them, holding them accountable. That's what they're there for.
Mm-hmm.
Any day Congress is open, you can go into the halls of Congress and talk to those leaders between sessions.
Mm-hmm.
You can make appointments, and that's for any of us. You can make appointments to see them. You can call a forum, bring a collective together, and say, boom, this is what we want to talk about, and
Mm-hmm.
this is how we want to understand what's your role. And if you don't have a plan, then we're putting out a call and asking you to make a plan, or let us make a plan for you, and you're either on board or not.
Mm-hmm.
So that is
and then I think the Black, not all, but a lot of people in the Black community are just okay and content with the way things are. That's what, especially when I hear this language. When Barack Obama was in office, oh, Barack Obama is the president of everybody. He's not the president of Black people. Black people, what Black issues? He shouldn't be forced to focus on Black issues because he's everybody's president. And then now going into 2020, the only Black tangible that's been consistent, that the so-called Black people want, the collective, is to remove Trump and replace him with Biden.
Right.
So that's why I'm just kind of like just over it.
I wouldn't.
That's why immigrants come over.
Describe that as a one-off.
Well, it's not, but it's not. But I'm just like, if immigrants come over here, African immigrants come over here, take advantage of everything, and make the most out of it. It's a great job to them.
Right, but what we're saying is then our voice is lost. People aren't.
But we don't want, like, the majority of us don't want a voice or power. That's the problem.
But I think they do. I think a lot of people do, and don't want to go the distance to get their voice heard, is what I'm saying. We can do this on social media, but they're not watching.
Okay.
And I say, go to Congress yourself.
Okay.
I say, come with me. I think they'll hear us. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I think that the conversation has to move from being disgruntled to taking action, mm-hmm. and challenging them, or at least getting in their face and saying, here's what we're concerned about, here's what we feel you guys as a Black caucus is not doing, and be a part of that change.
Right.
Be a change agent. And I think that we all have the power to do that. And now to say that, if I read someone's comment, and I think it's already gone on the screen, but they said, yeah, I could go and talk to a brick wall. But I don't think it's a brick wall anymore.
Okay.
I really don't. I really think that we have to drive the agenda. We have to be that voice. That is what social media is all about. That is what using your brand power is all about, making change. And even challenging these guys, and showing them the difference between what is happening in other communities by getting their support versus what is not happening in our community by not getting their support.
Okay.
And I just think that that's what we can draw from that. But I also think that, like when the Congressional Black Caucus happens in September, we should be there.
Right.
We should be there challenging people. We should be there carrying a message, and we should create our own environment to get that conversation exposed.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Monday is a Nigerian immigrant. He said he's received no handouts. So when there are immigrants that are saying, hey, look, we came here, we worked hard, we bootstrapped. What are your thoughts on that comment? I know some that they didn't receive any handouts, and they came and they just bootstrapped.
Yeah.
So, and some say that, we shouldn't have this entitled, even though we're old, we shouldn't have this entitled spirit. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
That traditional African Americans should not have an entitled spirit.
That's how some feel, and that opportunity is here for everybody. And
well, I say that this is where I say immigrant Africans oftentimes have obviously not been a part of the struggle that we have endured, hundreds of years generationally, and their story might be different as to how and why they came to America. But I still think that we are still due something, mm-hmm. not entitled, like a spirit of entitlement, but anything you worked hard for, you want to return on it. And I think that that's what that's about. And that for everywhere they have tried it, even as immigrant Africans, you can't make good 10 footsteps in this country and not see the labor and work of an African American slave. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't have that history with us. They may know about it, but they don't share in it.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Right.
And so that to me makes it different. Unlike how, like, okay, let's just use South Africa and the ending of apartheid.
Right.
Many African Americans, as well as America, but many African Americans went and shared in that struggle to help free South Africa. Many African Americans here in the United States was a place of refuge for many South Africans that left the country in exile
Mm-hmm.
and helped build their business, brand, music, culture, whatever, to support them being here. We're just now as African Americans getting any kind of open door policy with Africa. But
Mm-hmm.
as it pertains to here in America, there's a lot of unfinished business with the country of
Right.
America in that regard. And if Jewish people was able to get um, reparations for their Holocaust, what's wrong with us getting that same for ourselves?
Right. Exactly.
And it's our Holocaust. We experienced it. Immigrant Africans didn't. They literally were able to stay in Africa and experience their life and then come here and build a new one, benefits or not. But every immigrant that enters into the United States have some sort of immigrant benefit. They're not just popped out here on zero. And then sometimes just because they are an immigrant, people give them opportunities that they may not give you or I because we've been living here our whole lives. So I think that we need to have a balanced perspective on the difference between an immigrant African and an African, traditional African American, historical African American, or however they make that distinction. I call us descendants of Africa, but everybody has their own.
But somebody in the chat room said this, and you are correct. If you go into the welfare offices, especially in LA, you're going to see predominantly Latino and Asian immigrants there. So, and now they just passed it in California where illegal immigrants now can get health insurance.
See, but the ones that aren't
right.
what happens? But again, guys, we can always come with a reason why to be divided. And I'm going to tell you, the white man has been able to count on that for centuries and centuries. The fact that we can't get along, that even the best person, somebody's going to find a reason to not like that person and create a consensus. And then now we all fall down. Or there's always going to be an Uncle Tom in our midst that the white man can show enough count on. There's always a house nigga. There's always a field nigga that they can count on, keeping us divided, keeping us at odds. So at some point, we really, really have to agree to disagree on certain things, and then agree to agree, so that together we make progress. Because even as I continue my message with Africa, that we are stronger together than we are apart, I still mean that as far as African Americans of all types here in the United States, that we really are stronger together than we are apart. And then as it pertains to the AU, I was a bit taken aback.
Real quick before we move on to that, one thing I want to, I guess, set the record straight on as well, and I want to clear up, is some people are making it seem like the African immigrant is the biggest threat to Black Americans, which is not true. Golly, it's not. We need to stop that.
We really do. We really, yeah. I'm not saying that they are a threat to us. I'm just saying that we have different issues, and we need to acknowledge and respect that, and put that on the table as we look at how to come together, so that what they need is sorted out and addressed, and what we need is sorted out and addressed. It doesn't mean we cannot work together. It doesn't mean that we are a threat one to the other. We just don't need to be operating in different silos. You know, we need to come together. And if anybody can hear that, then hopefully they can receive it. I'm saying again that we are stronger together than we are apart. We are stronger together as a collective of African people, be it an African immigrant or a descendant of Africa, that our collective body as the African diaspora, we are stronger together than we are apart. And if we can start there and agree on that premise,
I agree.
Then all the other things that we might differ on should fall away. It doesn't top the charts of what's really important. And what's really, really important, everybody, is our unity. I really think that we're not going to win anything. We're not going to win economically in Africa if we don't unite. And we certainly aren't going to win anything here in the US if we don't unite. Is all I'm saying.
And guys, hit that like button. We have 245 people watching, only 85 likes. Please hit that like button as you come in. And we were talking about this before we got started. The Latino immigrants from south of the border are way more of a bigger threat to Black Americans. But for some reason, I don't know why a lot of Black Americans are focusing on African immigrants or immigrants from the Caribbean. That's just a waste of time and energy.
Yeah, I think, you know, like I said, when you look at the rising numbers of the Hispanic community and when you look at their rise economically, they are already with, okay, if you just keep an eye on the board, on these NBC, MSNBC, CNN, political shows, when they're showing you the demographic breakdown of where everybody falls and everything except negative stuff, the Hispanic community outpaces us from population to economic growth. So it's time to wake up, guys. And grabbing sticks and fighting in the street in the next decade is not going to help you. Not one bit. But I'm telling you that we're on for a Black and brown war in America in 2020 and beyond, because what is going to become more obvious in the next decade, which we are about close to just 5 months away from, is the fact of where the Hispanic community has excelled and how they are, their presence and their progress, their presence and their progress is pushing the African American agenda further down on the important chart with politicians. Again, when you saw them speaking Spanish at the last debate, that tells you where they are shifting their interests, where they are shifting their idea of who is the hot button for minorities. You know, they are the number one minorities today. And I just don't think we're watching that and understanding. So when we can't get along enough to do anything significant, when we can't have a successful business, when we don't support each other, when we throw shots at one another in social media, casting down people's name and power and influence, we are only doing that to ourselves, guys, because they're not doing that to each other as a united Hispanic community. And you're going to see the power of their secret sauce in this next decade. Then everybody's going to want to be mad and running out in the streets and fighting and carrying on, but it'll just be too late. So I'm saying, please wake up.
And in fact, the Congressional Black Caucus on their website, that's why the Congressional Black Caucus, they're just nothing but sellouts. On their website, it says they're here to address and focus on the issues of the Black community and other marginalized communities. Meanwhile, when you go to these other groups' websites, whether it be the Hispanic Caucus or the, I think it was the Asian Pacific Islander Caucus,
They're only about themselves.
Only about themselves.
And that is something that they need to change. I will say that traditionally, these caucuses, like the Hispanic caucus, is a rising caucus because the caucuses comprise of elected officials. And maybe in the past, there were not enough Hispanic representation to be forming any measure of a caucus. And they Everybody who was a minority typically always came under the umbrella of the African American banner. So, or the black, anything black, you know. So, but now that these groups are forming and becoming larger and they are electing their own, then they create their own because they have more representation in Congress and in any other platform to be a separated caucus now. And so that being said, we need to challenge the CBC to make that change and to say, look, those people are going to take care of themselves. They got their Hispanic and their Island Pacificers and maybe even the Jewish caucus or what have you.
Mhm.
But the point is now you need to be totally focused on us because they got their groups.
Mhm.
We need you to be focused on us and what our concerns are. And then when it comes to the African Union, which is a part of this clarion call of the descendants to return home, then I think that they need to be on board with us as it pertains to Juneteenth
Right.
and reparations. I was really surprised to see that there was no AU representation at the hearings.
Mhm.
And that's just so vital to us even being able to go home and be a bigger contributor to Africa's growth story by us having received what is due us to be more
Mhm.
of a leader, to make a greater contribution. If you really understand the mandate around creating or calling the diaspora the sixth region of the continent of Africa, that came purely about May 25th, 2012 in Johannesburg with the African Union and the Pan-African Parliament. That whole designation came about because they were calling our great minds, our intellect, our economic abilities to come back and help build Africa together. If we could have had a better footing post slavery, we could have even more to go back and contribute
Mhm.
to the continent. We could feature more pronounced as a viable capacity partner with Africa. So they kind of work hand in hand. You cannot be a part of the clarion call without being a part of what our issues still
Mhm.
are, because if we're to care about Africa, then you have to care about us. Plain and simple. This is not a one-way relationship here with either Africa or the AU. It is not. It's together, each achieves more. And if we are laboring in your pains and helping to bring growth and expansion and economic transformation out of Africa, then they need to be on board with us, and not just from the AU perspective, but across Africa. The way the whole world united around South Africa and the ending of apartheid and other atrocities in Africa, then we are still in our own atrocity here in the United States. Make no mistake about it. Every day, a Black person is gunned down, unarmed. That same guy who is now in the hospital in Georgia fighting for his life, he had no gun, zero in the car as a homeless person.
Mhm.
And yet the police officer shoots him in the head. And so we're in our own, our Holocaust is still going on. Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, and so many others that I can't even name them all. But from Malcolm X to Martin Luther King, hey, we are still very much in and experiencing a Holocaust. So until all of Africa as a representative body, as the AU joins us in this, we have to ask of them, please get with us as we have gotten with you. I think that that's only fair. I really do, people. I really, really do.
And then, just for me to put this on record, I would much rather see our African immigrant brothers and sisters come over here than any other immigrant group out there. I would much rather see you guys here.
Absolutely.
But again, come, gain the skills, but we must go back and build up Africa. And I think that's the point. I think that's where, the disconnect is. Come, I don't care, get all the degrees, get all the skills, I get it all, take advantage of all of it. But Africa must be number one.
Yeah, don't turn your back on home. just because you're in America. I see that sometimes
Right,
as
right.
well,
Mhm.
you know, and I have to say, I see it more in the Nigerian community than any other group of people. You
Mhm.
guys, and maybe sometimes South Africans and Nigerians, sometimes they act like they weren't from Africa. They start losing their well, Nigerians don't lose their accents, but definitely South Africans
Mhm.
try to lose their accent and completely lose their identity. And I've taken up that issue so many times with different South Africans here in the United States, that you are not serving your country well when you come over here and forget about them and forget about your role as being a part of this ongoing relay race. You got to run your leg of the race well and carry your own baton and be making significant progress. You know, stop admiring leaders and actually become one, truly, because we all have an opportunity to give back to the continent, we in one way or another. So I say that we should definitely welcome Africans directly from the continent. We need you as much as you need us. Again, we are stronger together than we are apart. And that is the truth of the matter. And when you come this side to the US, always keep Africa in your view. Always keep where you can give back or where you can create an opportunity for yourself and others by your being here.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Like somebody in the chat room says, white people brought European immigrants in droves, so we should bring Africans in droves. I have no issue with that.
Me either.
I have no problem with African immigrants coming in droves, because what they've done, they actually make it harder for African immigrants to come to America than any other immigrant group anyway. So let the African immigrants in. I'm all for it.
That's right. That's right.
As long as they're not coons. The coons, don't bring the coons over here. And I think that's the problem. The too many coons are immigrating over here to America. And I think that's where we butt heads a little bit. But go ahead. Let's move on.
So I agree with that too. That we when I say we are stronger together than we are apart, it means if we carry the same mindset towards building Africa, towards uniting here, bringing our resources, continuing to make a demand on other resources that we haven't gotten, so that we are stronger together in building Africa. Because I'm going to tell you, you know, Africa still will own the next decade, 2020 and beyond. 7 out of 10 of the world's fastest growing economies are on the continent of Africa. So we still have to make a plan to feature in that space. If you don't have an Africa plan, if you don't have a millennial plan, you're definitely going to be left out of the next decade of really good business and good opportunities. So that's really important to not forget about. Why, if you came as an immigrant from Africa, why are you here?
Right.
And what contribution can you make back home by your being here?
Absolutely.
I wouldn't want anybody here from Africa wanting to just be here. And some people are struggling and going through hard times here as African immigrants and still don't want to think about going back home, you know, and just gathering knowledge here, influence, relationships, insights on things, all of that can be repackaged in a unique way to serve Africa, even while you're still here in the United States. So don't forget about the continual growth of Africa and how you need to be participating in that.
All right, so I guess we're going to discuss some more of the.
I want to finish.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think I stopped at number 3. Okay, so number 4 was funds for cooperative enterprises and socially responsible entrepreneurial development. You know, when we look at how much time our dollar spends in our own community, what did it say, about 6 seconds? 6 minutes?
Even that.
Something that.
Even that.
Literally. That time we get it, it's going out, but it's not going back into our own communities. So that keeps weakening our power. Because see, when the Hispanic community, everything is Hispanic and they're supporting each other. And in the Asian community, everything Asian, they support each other. And none of those guys have been here as long as we have.
Right.
And it's, despite the bombing of Black Wall Street and all of that, we still kind of have to make that mental shift around supporting Black business,
Right.
And keeping dollars in our community. And so we need money to help us do that, create enterprises and socially responsible entrepreneur development. And then number 5 is resources for health, wellness, and healing of Black families and communities. I don't think there's a person listening that would disagree with the fact that we need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Number 6, education and community development and empowerment. Number 7, affordable housing for healthy Black communities and wealth generation. 8, strengthening Black Americans' information and communications infrastructure. 9, preserving Black sacred sites and monuments. And 10, repairing the damages of the criminal injustice system.
Is there anything? Here we go. Resources for the health. Is there anything that mentions a check, like monetary amount on there?
No, I think that's a part of what the commission is doing, and
Okay.
they will be putting out clarion calls for the public to engage, so that we can get these numbers. I tell you, at one of the events I was at, the collective amount that they said that collectively from generation to generation and compounded interest and opportunities and la 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 was over $7 trillion.
Okay, they got it. The money's there.
7 trillion.
And real quick, guys, hit that like button. We have 271 people watching, only 135 likes. Please hit that like button. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, $7 trillion is one amount that I heard. Not billion, but trillion. And then someone even came with a quadrillion number, 3 quadrillion dollars, is what their calculation. So there are a lot of matrix and charts and in different sectors and things that, and so we're bringing all of that together to unite that voice. And we're really asking even communities and groups that have been challenged to find a common table in the past is to, someone said just the student 70 trillion, not 7 trillion.
Yeah.
Hey,
sounds about right.
Yeah, I said 7 trillion, 70 trillion. I've even heard quadrillion. That's another whole level. I mean, but it's massive and untold. And it's just, we have to move the ball, our generation. We really, really, really do. See, I'm not upset with some things that President Mugabe did in Zimbabwe. He was very radical in his change because he said that he wanted to see changes happen in his lifetime.
Right.
And I think, and then sanctions and things, the superpowers came in and tried to just totally dismantle what he was trying to do. But I do understand the passion and the commitment he had to bringing change. And Donald Trump is no different. He wants to see change in his presidency, and he's doing it literally by any means necessary. He doesn't care who he makes mad. He doesn't care what ally becomes an enemy. He really doesn't. He's totally committed. And whether you like him or not, I don't agree with most of what he says and does. I know Dinah's kind of carries a different opinion. But one thing I do get from Donald Trump is his unfailing commitment to what he believes he's there to do. If we all could take up that ideology around being committed to what we are here to do, we could see change.
What do you say? I don't agree with, or
I'm saying you might have a different opinion of Donald Trump's presidency.
I mean, right now, there's no one on the Democratic side who I think is even worth replacing Donald Trump with, especially when the strategy is let's just replace this, I guess, racist with another racist named Joe Biden. So it's whatever. I mean, put it like this: Donald Trump is not my boogeyman.
I get you.
Well,
he's not mine either.
Yeah.
Because I try to look for a silver lining in everything. I don't care what it is. I do try to see, what's in this for me. What can I grab a hold of and grow from and take in my journey with me? And it is his leadership. And I know it's radical and out of the box, but one thing I don't agree with Donald Trump is how he tried to dismantle absolutely everything Barack Obama did in his presidency. I think that when you come into office, you should be on your own agenda and not tearing down someone's legacy or whatever, even if you didn't agree and da da da, but just carry on, you know. But he literally spent his first year and a half in office doing nothing at an executive level, but undoing absolutely line by line, bill by bill, undoing it was coming to me. It looked like from such a position of hate and racist hate. You know, we cannot ignore Donald Trump position on the Five Guys in New York, and how he played a role
See,
with that.
this is and not to defend Donald Trump. This is the issue I have with that. Everyone who was against the Central Park Five or supported them, who supported what happened to them as far as them going to prison, and who railroaded them, they were all Democrats. The lawyers, I know the prosecutor, Fairstein, she was a Democrat. Donald Trump at the time was a Democrat. And then from my understanding, a lot of black people in the community in New York supported what happened to them until they found out a year later. Yeah.
Yeah. But then sometimes real good evidence and things like that gets suppressed, guys.
Right.
It really does.
So the people but what I'm saying, the people that did the suppression were Democrats.
Yeah. And see and keep in mind, like you said, Donald Trump was a Democrat back then.
Right.
And who knows how his money was talking. I'm gonna leave it at that. Who knows how his money was talking in the party that he was supporting at that time. Donald Trump is a communication strategist, literally.
Right.
And he aligns himself with whatever he thinks he can conquer,
right,
and be heard on the loudest. At 1 year or one term, it could be Democrats, and then the other term, it could be Republicans. Because I don't know if that little thing that had been going on social media a lot when he first got elected, that talked about some comment he made back in the 90s about how he would become a Republican and take over the party and then become president, because they were weak and disjointed and la la la, and he did that though.
Right.
That was, I don't know if that was a real game plan or somebody created that after the fact, but the point is he did do that. And throughout everything that he's done, weird, crazy, out of the box, the Republicans have now become completely silent. No one speaks out against him. No one holds him accountable, and that's something to pay attention to. But I don't have a front runner for the next presidency. I'm not particularly drawn to anybody
if no one has
from the Democratic.
Whoever supports reparations, like actually supports it, and it's just not
a campaign.
Right.
But they actually support part of moving the ball.
Are going to move the ball forward with reparations. That's who'll get my vote. No reparations, no vote. I'll be fine. In fact, more than likely, when the election's being held, I'll probably be in Africa somewhere anyway. So.
Yeah, you can still do it though.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. You do it early or go to the embassy and cast your vote there. Then, if you happen to be in Nigeria or wherever. But and I do think that as a collective, we as African Americans, because despite whatever accelerated numbers the Hispanic community has, they are still not the number one voting minority. We still make elections happen or not happen.
Right.
And while that's still the case, because I do believe this next 2020 election will be the last election that African Americans have a predominant voice as a minority. Because I think in the next 4 years, the Hispanic community is going to wake up and get more politically engaged, and their vote is going to start counting more than our vote or as much. So, but while we still have that power through our vote, we need to make reparations an issue of decision and hold all candidates accountable for how that pans out in their campaign, where they position it as a priority. And so this is a very short and unique window of time in which to get that done. And I think that that's really important that we take a look at making that a prominent 2020 election issue.
Now, we were speaking on the African Union as far as the support for reparations, I think, and then we got
I just think that we need to ask the African Union to join us in whatever the going forward effort is, as well as create something that lets us know that they are with us in this fight on Juneteenth. I just can't believe there was no acknowledgement from the AU on Juneteenth. And there was also nothing on reparations. So I encourage us to seek a response and a commitment from the AU in that regards, because again, it's still part of this united voice that we're not going to achieve anything in all these fragmented groups where one group is talking about the other group and nobody really has a plan and we're just all over the show. It's not going to happen. And we can spend the next 18 months towards the election talking about it like this and get absolutely nothing done, or we can unite ourselves and come with some real pointed commitments and plan of action and get something done by the next election.
See what else we got here in the Bawoni Lola. What else we got here in the chat room? Does anyone want to call in? In fact, if you want to call in, here's my email. Send me email. If you want to call in, send me email and I'll let you in. I'll send you a link. All right, send me email. And guys, again, hit that like button as you come in and also share as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I like Sim Initial said more lobbyists work for the Black agenda. I agree. That's totally what we need. Totally. Otherwise, we're going to really start getting lost in this shuffle of minorities. Minority priority. We are no longer the priority minority.
Right.
We are not. And if we don't have some very pointed, committed lobbying, if that's what you want to call it, and we've just got to also turn the minds of bigger figures. It's not even political people, but just people that continue to carry the voice and have the platform, from Roland Martin to others. I know he's
Roland Martin.
Oh God.
Are you serious? Roland Martin.
I said carry a platform. Oh God, I knew you were gonna do that. Okay.
Roland Martin.
I'm just saying, media people who carry a platform to be heard.
Roland Martin
is important to include in using as a dialogue platform or as a platform to push an agenda and part of uniting. Okay, again, we are not going to.
Is this the same Roland Martin that was doing the 1-2 chop slide with Hillary Clinton? That Roland Martin? Do I need to show you the video? Do I need to show you the video again? No, let's this Roland Martin right here. Hold on.
All I'm saying
hold on, this Roland Martin. Hold on. No, go ahead and continue.
All I'm saying is, see, Dynas is a prime example. I'm still saying that we're gonna have to lay down our sword with the people in order to unite and get our message out.
No, let's go ahead and share the video, you guys.
That is what I'm saying.
This Roland Martin. Hold on.
We still are gonna have to do that. I knew you were gonna come with something.
Hold on. This Roland Martin right here. Hold on.
That is it for. We're gonna ask you. Do you know how to wobble?
Hold on. The wobble Roland Martin. Let me go back.
Do you know how to wobble?
The wobble Roland Martin.
Do you know how to wobble?
Do you know how to wobble?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you know how to wobble?
I don't.
You know how to wobble? You just lost the black vote right there.
No, see, so this Roland Martin, where you can win the black vote by doing the wobble with a presidential candidate. This Roland Martin.
Okay, I'm still saying.
Your staff will teach you how to do the wobble. Trust
Can
me.
you show me how to do it?
Oh, I can show you how to do it. You're gonna pick up some votes, trust me.
But I gotta see it in order to know it.
And see, this is why no one takes black people serious anymore. This is right here, because we got guys like Roland Martin.
I'm still
who has a platform and wants to do the wobble with Hillary Clinton.
Good. operative word in
Use
everything
the
you
music.
just
I'll make
said
the music,
is
bro.
have a platform.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Okay, who can show me? Come
And-
on, don't be
Right,
shy.
Again,
I told y'all Black Network we do a little bit different.
Well, you raised it. Now don't leave me hanging
Hold
out
on, can I
here.
put my iPod on? I got music.
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, plug this up right now. Y'all know I'll put it on now. Secretary Clinton, it's a pleasure. Thank you so very much. Claflin, thanks to you as well. Round of applause, please. Democratic presidential candidate,
Thank you,
Secretary
Roland.
Hillary Clinton. That's how I told y'all need the music.
We don't need his platform.
what I'm saying
We
is
don't
that
need Roland the
that's
wobble.
a clip. I have no idea what the entire interview is like. And all I'm saying is that we have to find a way to unite as a people. Everybody has had their own platforms and their agendas and the topics and issues. All I'm saying is for whatever measure of influence they have acquired with their platforms and with their audience, we can bring them to a state of consciousness and we can collectively carry our message across their platform and many others. That's all I'm saying. We have to figure out a way as a people to unite, regardless to whatever we did and didn't do in the past and however we said, whatever, we have to figure it out. And as long as we are disjointed in this way, we collectively are not winning. So we have to decide, are we going to discredit people who have platforms, or are we going to figure out a way to unite and use those platforms to get our message out and bring our people together?
Mhm.
That's my only position.
I mean, Roland Martin is about to twerk on stage with Hillary Clinton. And see, he's I mean, this is a 50-year-old man we're talking about.
Mhm. But I mean, are we going to do that to every journalist out there? Pick apart every move they ever made?
No, it's not that.
I
I just think, a lot of these guys, their intentions aren't sincere.
Well, I guarantee you, post TV1,
Mm-hmm.
because he was still on TV1 at that
Right.
time.
Right.
Post TV, I tell you, shifts in life definitely streamlines your focus.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And some stuff that he might have thought was good TV then, now that he's post TV1.
No, he knew better. He knew better.
But what I'm saying is, post TV1, I think, has streamlined his ideology.
Okay.
Because things can make you more conscious today than you were 5 years ago.
I mean, true, but okay.
So I'm just saying, it's a platform
My
that
thing
can
is-
be used in a constructive way to be a part of bringing our people together.
And
As
then-
one of many, just one of many.
And then I'll leave it alone. I just think if Hillary Clinton would have won, then the Roland Martin that we see that he's trying to be today, he'll be right now twerking at the White House with Hillary Clinton.
That would not have been good.
That's what I'm saying. These people aren't sincere at all.
Yeah. Are we taking a call?
Yeah, we're gonna take a call.
We're gonna take a call.
We're gonna take a couple. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Lucas Berady, I just sent you the link. You have a minute to hop on. Let's see here. Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Ruby. He's an opportunist. That's what he is.
Mm-hmm.
He's an opportunist.
Mm-hmm.
The insincere opportunist.
Yeah. While we're waiting on the caller,
Go ahead.
what have been your thoughts about Dr. Boyce Watkins?
I like Dr. Watkins. I don't have any issues with him.
Yeah, I do too.
I like Dr. Watkins.
I haven't watched.
I would rather see Dr. Watkins than Roland Martin.
Yeah, because he's been true to the cause,
Exactly.
like from an earthy perspective.
Exactly.
From way back when nobody gave a rip, he was making it happen.
Mhm.
And I respect his work greatly. I definitely respect Dr. Boyce Watkins' work, and he's created a lot of different brands and things, and to get the message out on Africa, on just being Black economics. You know, in my view, he's a well-rounded person.
Carla says Boyce is a clown too. I like Boyce. I mean,
but see, again,
I like. Boyce. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
I hear you fine. It's a lot of background noise, but go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, it's like a like an echo. Like, are you in a open, like a very open space, or like a hallway? I don't know.
No, it's actually linked to my computer, and I'm trying to stick you your microphone. So
Yeah, brother. We can't hear you. You gotta either change.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me better right now?
That's a little bit better. Go ahead.
All right. I was going to speak about the African Union. The African Union currently right now, as we think of it, is not an actual political body. It's, in comparison to the EU, it does not have an enforcement function that could protect Africa as a whole politically from either outside or interrelations in Africa economically with imports, exports to all the various countries, and militarily with security interests. So when we look at the African Union as being a partner at this level with African Americans, Caribbeans, or Brazilians, there's a problem because they don't have a political unity that will allow for them to actually mass their strength, their political strength with their resources, their interests to help protect Africans, you know, that are in the diaspora like African Americans. So there may be an interest or a country specific, like maybe Nigeria or something like that, that may be able to speak on behalf of the United States, pushing for something like reparations for African Americans. However, the problem I see is that due to their development interest, they are less likely, and also the military interests now that are growing in Africa, and multiple international interests that are growing in Africa, they're less likely to rock the boat in order to protect what they see are development aims for their people versus development interests that make conflict with no value for them, which would be African Americans and people in the diaspora. So go ahead.
Lucas, let me jump in and ask you then about the fact that they have declared the African diaspora as the 6th region of the continent of Africa for the very purpose of the assets that they believe we possess that could be a contributor to Africa's continual growth and acceleration, that they're wanting our minds and our abilities to come back home and help build Africa. That is the value. But by that same token, they have to be apprised and even concerned about how we do that, how we carry our assets, or what they are, or what assets we could have if certain other issues weren't at bay, like reparations. So I'm not sure if, and I do understand what you're saying about the military influence growing, external military influences growing in Africa. But if you're going to have a campaign go around globally to the diaspora around bringing the diaspora back to Africa, you kind of have to start from where people really are. And this is where we are. And I'm just not.
Real quick, and Kala brought this up, and we're going to actually talk about this. The 6th region is referring to Africa's recent immigrants, not African Americans. What are your thoughts on that?
No, that's not true.
Okay.
It's pertaining to those of African descent. It's literally a call to bridge that gap, close the gap of the 400 years that we have been disjointed from the continent. So it is talking to descendants of Africa. It's literally talking to us first, because in their minds, the 400-year separation has been with the descendants of Africa, not African immigrants. They can come and go as they choose. They already know their home. They still can speak the language. They have their culture with them. So they might have just come on the table of discussion, but that certainly was not who that framework was built around on May 25th, 2012 in Johannesburg with the African Union and the Pan-African Parliament. Believe me, I was there. It was one of the most riveting experiences of my life and times in Africa thus far. So they were absolutely talking to us, the descendants of Africa. Maybe in the last 5 years or so, the immigrant African has come on the table, but not at that moment when that resolution was made. Not at all.
And guys, let's hit that like button. We have 324 people watching, only 176 likes. Please hit that like button. All right, go ahead, Lucas.
I'd like to add that the United States just recently, in imitating China in competition, added $60 billion, and this is capital. There's a mix of private capital and government guarantees for loans, business activity out throughout the continent of Africa, mainly sub-Saharan Africa, to gain access or favor for key resources, strategic resources. This helps actually stimulate various Americans, especially like some of, I think you had a one time Dinus, white Americans going over there. Mm-hmm. They're going to be able to benefit from those kind of activities. So basically it's spurring on a type of mini capitalism. So if African Americans, you know, in the diaspora, or that kind of community that Africa, you know, Western Africa in particular, may be looking at to come be a power engine or a power plant that can help stimulate the economy, then I think they have to make that leeway for some kind of set aside money that'll help them come in with guarantees for loans, for land. And granted, African Americans have skill with agriculture, even though we're only down to about 40 or 50,000 African Americans that can do agriculture. They do need people that are skilled being farmers. We do have African Americans that are very skilled in the entertainment industry. We have African Americans that should be helping to come build gyms, basketball leagues, baseball leagues. What else African Americans are really good with? They're also very good with government functions as advisors for many of these government services. So I think that if they're wanting some of that, they have to develop methods. One, let's identify these A-grade, not just A-grade individuals that are going to come and invest in their country. That's something totally different.
Right.
If they're really looking at capitalizing off this African American population or any of it, I think they have to identify here's what we're going to invest to get a small sample of people going. These are the aspects of the economy we want them to come in on. And I think that would at least help stimulate the growth of a community, a diaspora community in, let's say, Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone. But right now, currently, I'm not seeing a government level effort to invest that kind of resource to get or attract. I think the current scheme is that it is a broad-based or easier approach to say, we're open arms, just come, but you have to bring resources and you have to be a business person for us to take advantage of you as opposed to you taking advantage of us.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. You know, I agree with you. Everything you just said is spot on, especially as it pertains to loans and tapping into our intellectual capital to serve as advisors, etc. Truly, African governments have been open to that in the past, and I would perceive that that's an area that will be growing in the future. But we really do have to, and I really want to get some input from you, Lucas, on just how the disunity of our community plays out into our inability to do a good portion of what is possible.
Well, I think you have to first establish unity. Africa was never one country, and yet alone multiple tribes. It's never been one. Actually, we need to look at this from the perspective, we are trying to do this for the first time.
Right.
There are going to be mistakes. There are learning curves that in order for us to get everyone corralled around an identity of Africanness or Blackness, and that it has strength. I think the confidence is missing that, you know, it's, I guess it's best expressed in African countries trade next to nothing. They trade collectively next to each other less than $5 billion a year within the borders of Africa, between each other. Now, that is an expression of them not having confidence in their ability to produce goods, exchange or sell things or commodities that they want from each other. So I think we're, you know, whether they're epicenters in Kenya that becomes a manufacturing base, Ethiopia for textiles, there's going to have to be a growth around some level of confidence that begins to shape more countries having a model they can follow in Africa. And I think the closest one right now is being Rwanda, because
Yeah.
Rwanda has a smaller population. It has a very strong leader. It has a very direct aim where he is trying to capitalize off of higher end industries. He's got the BMW plant. He's trying to get more upper echelon technology fields to come into his country, take advantage of peaceful environment, a skilled environment, investments into the infrastructure and investment into education. And then, you know, basically he's going to try to basically buoy that to be a bigger leader for the rest of Africa. Now, where I think what most African countries really need to be doing, you ever looked at the Middle Eastern countries? Well, not all of them, but basically mainly the Gulf countries. Do you know what they do in terms of how they keep control of assets and control the flow of capital in their countries?
No, what do they do?
They basically make any foreign business they have to own all businesses. A foreign entity can't own greater than 49% of a business. A local national or someone in GCC has to own 51% or greater of that business.
I want to say that's somewhat how it is in Nigeria to a point.
Now, okay. Now, what it does, and here's another, I mean, what it's supposed to do is that every business you deal with, you have someone that has direct relations with the government, that has direct local interest, and it's meaning to plug in that capital. So that means that capital should always be flowing through your banks. Your banks are then supposed to be doing what with that money? Multiplying the value of that capital, multiplying the value of those assets. Now, there's another point of it is that you also buy into that business or that asset. So if you have ownership of it, those companies can't come in and say, hey, we own, you know, let's say 100% of this business we have in your country, and we're wanting more favor to, you know, get greater tax advantages, or we want to, they're sucking out all the money and then basically there's no value growth in your currency. That's because you don't have any ownership. Your locals don't have any ownership. Your rich class doesn't have any ownership. Your government has no control. So you're at the whim of foreign external environment. And then it carries over into your land when they start buying up your land. It is key for many of these African countries. They should be owning all these resources. There should be no leasing. There should be nothing but commodity-driven partnerships where they are the majority owner. And if they don't majority own it, hey, we'll make this deal with you, but we're going to majority own that asset. So all the cash flow, you want the cash flow, you want the multiplier effect of money going through your banks or whatever currency you want to use, that's going to be able to help you start making those key investments for businesses, for more schools, for more roads. Right now, they're literally giving away key assets for 50-year leases, 100-year leases. They're doing what the British did to the Chinese. This is not going to help them grow in any time. It's like they're basically giving a $1 billion investment and getting a $20 billion yield over that same period of time. And you think about the land, I mean, the mines in South Africa, you think about the mines in Botswana that they're doing these kind of deals with. You've got to look at African leadership, and there's got to be another way to commoditize these assets and spur on capital growth within these economies. Otherwise, they're only going to be the manufacturing floor of the rest of the world, and they're going to only be parts where there's private external ownership. And that's going to squeeze out eventually so many other people, so much potential for the younger people in Africa. For me, I think they need to follow the model of cash flow with the Middle East, the way they control capital, looking how everything moves. And then two, I think they need to follow, China and what is done with engineering on massive scale projects. They've got to be able to take advantage of, hey, we want 1,000 kids every year graduating with engineering degrees, and we want experience coming out of all these projects. China is the only one experienced with massive, wide distance road, railway, and bridge projects that Africa is going to have to use. And the only way I see they can do it is if they take the helm of what they're designing to be the infrastructure for an interconnected Africa and for internal economies to grow, versus it can be the slow process of all these individual private companies building their own infrastructure, taking up land, taking up for personal, whatever their interests are, competing interests. And it creates a quagmire for any future development or planned development that isn't going to be in favor of what local Africans need or the continent needs. And it goes back to the African Union. If they don't have a central plan that shapes every country or every company that comes into Africa, the lowest minimum wage for Africa is, let's say, 25 cents an hour or $1 an hour. This is the minimum wage wherever you go. Then every country knows, hey, you can't deal any lower than this, because what they're going to do and what you're seeing was driving African Union to basically open up borders and try to create these currencies in a hurry without having a central government, like a federal system that can control all that activity, is because they're being driven by these private interests, Europe and China, to basically help them expand and help them move products around quicker to infiltrate their markets before the Europeans or the Americans get it first. And that's not working in the interest of Africans, and they're not going to be able to control it once it really gets started and it gets out of their leeway, because they're going to be using their militaries that they're grounding there to help control those assets and protect them from those other interests. So for the African Union, they really need to get on the ball of establishing standards for across Africa, what they want for economic activity, what ports things can come in, what they can't go in, how they can travel, import duties, and that's airports too. And then they also need to determine what the minimum investments or all the investments. They need to be able to calculate and study all the economic activity. I think there should be a central African Union business where all international companies have to go through it. They have to establish their identity. All their transactions have to show some kind of commerce or activity going through it. Basically, that's what Wall Street does. All that economic activity actually has to go through their systems, all the banking activity. Even when you make a transaction with your bank, literally that information goes through Wall Street. They know all your banking activity. So the Reserve knows all that banking activity, and then they can study it. So they need institutions that are going to be able to handle that economic activity. And then I think last, they really do need to get Western powers, Eastern powers. They need to get it out of Africa, unless they want them. I think the interest could be, let them help you build a continental army, a continental navy, and a coast guard. Because if those interests stay there, they're not going there because they're there to be friendly and help local Africans. It's going to be to protect their interests. It's going to be to build up and enforce their interests, and they're going to take out parties that basically don't meet their interests. That's what they do. And I don't know if they really see the realization of that, but that is what they do. And you'll see a lot of destabilization that will occur due to it. And over multiple generations, over multiple political cycles, when you have what you would consider radical leadership. All that development is not going there and being quiet for nothing. It's going because they're anticipating, they have demands for that kind of activity to counter their interests. And their interests are to get access to those key strategic resources.
Well, thank you for that, Lucas. And I do want to say that the challenge I see with some of that being done via the AU, which would be the seat of the AU, which obviously is in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, is the fact that every African country and their presidents have a different outlook, I'll say, a different outlook on trade, different agenda, different natural resources, different players, that I think on the uniting Africa part is a bit still a challenge, and bringing them under this, because of the landscape of Africa, I would say that it's more developed regionally than on a continental basis. That what might work in Nigeria, especially given its population numbers and whatever its assets are, won't work in Kenya. So I think that that's part of why there can't be continentally certain standardized things. However, I do believe that there can be some, but when it comes to trade, given each country's different assets, that might dictate a different protocol for how investment is handled and how just the whole trade relationship goes.
Well, I would say, to respond to that, I would say, take note why Nigeria did not join in on opening up their borders for trade. And they did that for one.
They did. They recently joined.
Okay. I didn't. I
Yeah,
literally.
I want to say a few days ago, actually, they went on and joined the free trade agreement.
Okay, so they've been brought in. Okay.
But let me confirm that. But go ahead. I'm 99.
But I would say the key interest that they would have had is that essentially what you do to your labor market, what you do to your current established private market, is that there is huge competition from, let's say in Nigeria, they got to do $2 an hour. And then across other parts of Africa, it's only 99 cents or 50 cents.
Not to cut you off, they joined a couple days ago. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, but that would have been the interest, basically. But since they've joined, it seems that they're going in a rapid rush. Again, without any brain power. Now, I'm just saying, look at what China is doing. China is acting with one brain. It's acting with one brain, and it is centralizing all of its activity, and then with each partner establishing them to their central organization. If you don't do it, somebody else will. And that's what they're doing. And now China and America seem like they're competing, but it will not be long before both countries say, hey, why are we competing? Let's join together. And they're going to do it. And it's not going to take them long to figure that out. And they're going to get together along with Russia and say, how are we going to divvy this up? And those interests are not going to be suited towards the interests of actual economic development aimed at African growth. It's going to be aimed at their private interests. One more thing I hope that the African Union building needs to actually be destroyed. They need to actually send a Tomahawk missile, destroy it, and build it with actual African hands, with African money. It is a absolute travesty and disgrace for Africans to allow a foreign entity to pay for and build their building that is supposed to be an ode to all of Africans. It is a disgrace, and that building needs to be destroyed.
And it's also important to recognize some of these emerging groups like BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, that Russia is also expanding its influence in Africa via its strategic alliance economic relationship with China. And China made the biggest growth progress in Africa when we were manning George Bush, Iran and Iraq wars. Mm-hmm. America was completely asleep to Africa and how to engage it from an investment partnership perspective, to move from giving aid to being an effective trade partner. And in many African countries, America is their number 1 or 2 or 3 export trade partner, and typically China is outpacing them. But in terms of just overall trade and investment, China is way, way up here, and America is way, way down here. And then the alliance of Russia and China in Africa is growing far beyond the BRICS framework as well. So I think that, and I like this point that Chima Madhu made. He said, here is the problem. Black people are the only ones who don't have a worldly mindset. That's why we always lag behind everyone else. And I totally agree with that, that we're not looking globally enough to see how to advance our economic agenda. We're just too busy trying to do something down the street or around the corner, typically. And
I would like to offer you a different perspective. I would actually say it's not your worldly vision that's impeding Africa. It's your actual local vision. You're not basically unifying and creating any kind of vision for what that development needs to be. You're not creating any kind of vision. Like, for example, the ruler of Dubai said when he was young, his father took him to Paris. And he would go to these European tours. And you know what he said when he was young? He said, man, I saw all of this great architecture and building. You know what I want? I want it for my country. You go to Dubai now, and I think, Dennis, you've passed through Dubai before, haven't you?
I have, briefly.
Yes, but I mean, basically, this is all by design. This is someone controlling, implementing development, and controlling how capital is coming in, how growth is growing, and making a purpose of, I'm going to be a hub, not for the world, but for all of the Middle East and Western countries, and be a hub. There are several places and locations that can be the same thing. And so I guess with the mindset, I think it is, you got to turn over and have an African vision. And here's the thing, they can control the economy if they make their own rules. Again, in your country, you can make your own rules for how, if you want to trade ivory shells, that's the currency. You can do it that way. And guess what? Everybody's got to get ivory shells. If you want your people, like if you want your economy where everyone that gets a college education, you get automatically land for a house. That is your system. You can make it grow like that. That's essentially right. If you try to mimic all of the Western powers and their activities, you can't outdo them. The Chinese learned that they can't outdo them. You know what the Chinese said? We were basically trying to become Westerners. We were trying to become American and Europeans. We had to do it the Chinese way. And what did they do? They reversed course. And they said, we're going to do it the Chinese way. Africans are going to have to find a way to do it the African way and still be able to take advantage of science and technology, but still they have to shape a culture where there's an African way with doing engineering, with doing the development and political safety or political stable environments that they need. But one more thing for African Americans in particular, since I think that's what we all are. If we have an interest in terms of growing in places like Africa, I hope we can grow in a more concentrated fashion in terms of, like I said, activities like farming. If we get into sports, like what the NBA is rolling out, but it needs to be in a concentrated fashion so we begin to grow wealth. And what I mean, if we need to take over the industry, just like you've seen Asians and they go over into Indians, and like you said, over in Tanzania, they concentrate around retail. They don't make this stuff. They basically buy stuff from importers. They buy all the goods and then they sell them to you and mark up the price. But that's their economic activity, and it helps them then begin a foothold in your economy, and it helps them get political favor. I think African Americans, if that's the interest amongst a segment of African Americans, we're going to have to take advantage. I think the quicker way is going to be taking advantage, not of African activity, but with the American government saying, hey, we want to go over here and get in this game too, of this development that you got going on with all this military activity and your interest. We want to get some of these loans to start some of these businesses. And we begin to help form hubs where African Americans can grow economic interests and take over and compete locally in their economy and take over. I mean, I'm not saying we got to do it in a bad way where we're not looking at the interest of locals. I think we have a unique time, a way to both offer economic development and take over an industry, and at the same time offer opportunities to local Africans compared to Chinese or even other Europeans, because we would have the interest in long-term investment of making sure these people grow from the activities that we do, or that they own some of it. I think that's different. I think that's something we offer uniquely if we were to grow and gain a foothold. And then it will allow more African Americans from the US to look at alternatives to just looking at the United States, but could look back at Africa as a resource for their own economic future of growth and keep contributing. But like I said, Donis, I think we should take over the state of Atlanta, though. I mean, the state of Georgia. And then
do what?
Well, I would recommend the African Americans, as they're basically losing ground in all the major Midwestern and Northern states, start focusing on a concentrated state like Georgia. Georgia has a deep water port.
Listen, that makes sense, but the problem is, again, and I said this before, the issue with Black people here in America, and especially here in Atlanta, is Black people not want power. Like what you said is a great idea, but people like Lance Bottoms, who's the mayor here, is more concerned about making Atlanta a sanctuary city than what you said.
I think, I understand what you're saying, Donis. I think that it's going to take the groundwork of helping African Americans understand that diversity.
Basically, what's going on here is Black people in Atlanta are still stuck in the Martin Luther King, Auburn Avenue, Selma, glory days.
Yeah.
I think
they're just.
I agree.
Donis, yes. Go ahead, man.
Excuse me, I'm going to take some hits on that, and because I know what I'm about to say. Hey, sometimes I don't speak the truth, I know, because I just don't want to encounter everything that comes behind it. But this is really critical, what Dinas just said. And because when I'm here in the US, I spend a lot of time in DC and New York working in these Black networks on policies and a whole bunch of other stuff. I really have to tell you how outside of Atlanta sees Atlanta. Atlanta is a primary place to convene stuff, but it's not a place to actually do stuff. You want something done, it's very difficult to come to Atlanta and get it done. It's a lot of people that have vast social media popularity in Atlanta, but they're just as broke, busted, and disgusted as the homeless person on the street. Believe me, I know them. And as long as Atlantans can get 100+ likes on their pictures and their stories and things, they're fine. But in actually doing something, pushing the ball that actually moves the Black agenda like it was in the days of old, I agree with Dinas. They are still inebriated by the old days, by Atlanta being the seat of the civil rights movement. But that's why we haven't moved the ball out of Atlanta. And the mayors, as gentrification takes on an all-time high in Atlanta, we could literally be experiencing the last Black mayor of one of the most predominant Black cities of Atlanta. And the only way she's going to get reelected in this next election is if she care about the ones who will be casting the real vote. And if you look at the white population growth in Atlanta from gentrification, then you'll understand what is her priority. It's not Black people, it's white people in Atlanta, truly, because there is no conscious mayor that could have been whatever part of the fabric of the society of Atlanta, and watch this homeless story grow and grow and grow, Black mayor after Black mayor after Black mayor, and no one do anything about it still today. That is a sheer sign. I mean, literally, Atlanta homelessness is a whole population of people unto itself. It's a nation, literal nation. Hello. The homeless in Atlanta is a nation. It's enough people to create a nation about, and no one gives a damn. And that is a big problem for Black Atlanta. And it's fading every day. And as long as these little wannabe stars of Atlanta can get their 150 likes on their social media, they are fine. They don't care. That's all they want is the image of success, but not having actually tasted any of it.
I 100% agree with you all. I understand exactly the perspective that you're talking about. But I look at the reality in a way that, Donis, you've looked to Africa and you've seen the opportunity. I look at America. I look that you have a vastly growing immigrant population. You have more gentrification that are pushing Blacks out of Midwestern cities, northern cities, and Western cities. You basically have no upward mobility because you control no economic assets or activities. The only way you can bounce back from that is that you have to look at taking over the level where political control is allowed. That's only at the state and federal level. If you gain it at the state level, you then can begin reversing and establishing priorities where you can reverse economic trends for African Americans. And this is across the board. A degree in whatever you think that you're doing right now is not going to save you from the massive amount of cuts that automation is going to endure or put onto the American population. I'm just saying, I think that realistically, we're going to have to look at some form of shelter, and that shelter is not going to come from, if you're living in California, it's not going to be coming in terms of a state that is majority focused on Hispanic issues. You're not going to get it from a state. I'm from Mississippi. You're not going to get it from a state like Mississippi if it says majority white.
What part of Mississippi are you from?
Hattiesburg.
Okay, my family's from Terry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, that's perfectly fine. But I'm saying I'm looking at opportunities that how can you grow if you did get political control of the state? You made a port, and all the shift in terms of the imports for all the things that we get in China are going to start shifting to Africa. We're going to need ports in order to bring in those assets. Once you gain those assets, that means now you control how that logistics of how it's going to flow throughout America. You can then put pressure with actual Africans. Let's say, because they're building the ports out of Ghana, the port out of Angola, the port, I don't think Nigeria has one, but basically Senegal as well. Basically, those main key ports now could be bringing assets into a key hub that the Africans agree to, which could be, Georgia. And with that port, now you can control the entire major logistics hubs for entire US. You actually can start competing against FedEx. You can actually competing against all the trucking companies, all the trucking industries. And you have a way to actually start back creating jobs for at least some segment of the Black population. And you don't need the majority of Blacks anymore now. We only need roughly, half the population, 20 or 25 million, and then start growing back up. And that literally could take 2 states. But I'm saying it for African Americans, I'm seeing that in our future, if we don't gain some kind of political stability where we can trust that laws are going to be made with our interest or us included, and I don't see that currently right now with the Democratic Party, and I sure don't see it with the Republican Party. We're going to have to do something to help secure our own future or give us some kind of space to secure some kind of future, because it doesn't look good if it stays on the trajectory that it's going right now.
It absolutely doesn't. It does not look good. So again, we still have to, and I agree with what you said, we have to unite our people. I personally believe that all progress will begin from unity, and you'll see how far we go based on how much we are united. I
just believe that we have to build. I think it's the first time, like I said, it's the first time we're trying to build across Africans, Blacks in Europe, the Caribbean. It's the first time, and I think it needs to be seen as such. So I do support organizations. I do support the promotion of events that would bring, Africans and, all the people that are Black in the world together for events that will then help them develop an identity, or at least some kind of shared identity beyond what it is now, so that we can have actionable steps that translate into actions with governments in Africa, actions with governments in the Caribbean that look out for economic interests of this broader identity. Right now, it's encapsulated just in being Nigerian or just being Jamaican or being Trinidadian or something like that. We needed, some of that scope to begin to expand outside. So we need organizations and people that become the right promoters of it. Now, Dynas, I am sometimes critical of, individual, Africans that I've come across that are very critical minded of African Americans, because naturally it does kind of get to me. I used to stay in Europe as well. I used to stay in London, and they asked me, why are they calling Obama Black when he's mixed race? And they didn't want to hear explanations of that's the way America may see him, but truly he has, and everyone knows that he is biracial. But they would try to impose their way of viewing the world and wonder why we were not taking advantage of all the opportunities.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
Because shortly after he was elected, he was on The View. And I don't remember if it was before he was sworn in or immediately after he was sworn in as president, because he was on The View. And that was one of the questions that one of the ladies of The View asked him. And the question was this: President Obama, or President-elect Obama, why is it that you do not hold yourself out as a mixed race person? And he said, you can find it online and take it from there. But he said, because the police will not see me as a mixed race person. Now, that's something to be said for a president to say that he perceives his identity, or he has taken on his own identity as a mixed race person based on how the police sees him. This was his answer. And it was within either a month of him being sworn in or the month that he won the election before he was sworn in. But that really, and for me, the reason why I know that as an answer, because I never forgot that even the person in the highest office in the land says that he defines his own identity based on how the police sees him.
I think that
I thought that was riveting.
No, I think it's not necessarily. I think it's just how he may consider himself, what extent he considers him Black. I think that if there was a standard for judging someone based on their Blackness or their contributions to Blackness, let's say, did you go to a Black school, or for example, do you contribute to Black organizations or philanthropy? Do you live in a Black majority community? Do you go and invest in Black businesses? So essentially, you have some accumulated measure of being able to assess. Doesn't matter if you're partially Black, full Black, you're from Africa. What are you contributing? You have to have some way to be able to assess this. So basically, immigrants, for example, Blacks into the U.S., they're not coming there to join Blackness. They're coming to the U.S. to look for their own economic interests and achieve their own economic goals, which may not necessarily be against Black people at first, but if it comes in competition, which it can, that could be a problem. So I think that I'm seeing a lot of African organizations that are growing, that are talking about their interests, what they want from politicians, that we're going to need individuals, like what you promoted, being able to talk about some kind of shared unit, some kind of shared economic platform or standard that we'll all adhere to. Otherwise, it's going to keep an environment where there's disunity because of conflicting interests at an individual level versus at higher levels of group and then, identity for all of us to grow, see ourselves growing with and investing in so it can grow. But hey, I don't really have anything else. It's a pleasure actually being able to speak to you all. I really enjoyed both of you all.
Thank you. We appreciate your input.
Thank you for coming on. Appreciate it. Real quick, let me read some of these super chats. Sure. Theodore Williams said, Can it all not be about African Americans going back to Africa to be money power hungry neo-colonial substitutes? Where are you getting this from? Where are you getting this from, Theodore? I can't stand when people make assumptions like that. You want to speak on that, or we're just gonna ignore that?
Well,
Yeah, where are you getting this from? Like,
I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know.
you know what it is? It's just for some reason when Black people associate African Americans going back to Africa, it has to be just this earthly woke. If you woke, you got to be broke. You know, we're just gonna just get on hands and knees, start kissing the ground, and you know, it's just like I don't know where this mindset comes from. We're talking about doing business.
Right. And we're talking about building a legacy.
Then the thing is, Africans would rather do business with us versus anybody else.
And a lot of people don't know that.
But okay, well now you know.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that.
So this whole idea that we're being neo-colonial substitutes, what are you talking about? Yeah, Becky, you can stay here and do the same Selma Bridge March. There you go. Hook up with John Lewis and you know, and march to Selma. All right, go ahead.
And we gotta want to do more than march to Selma.
Yeah.
We really do.
Mm-hmm.
Our community is in perils.
All right, and then hands up, don't shoot, and yeah, just the status quo.
You know,
you could be the status quo Negro here in America. There you go.
Right. And that's a big part of what's wrong with Atlanta.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, people of influence, they kind of swim in, you know, Atlanta's very cliquish, so you could be in or out. And there's a very clear distinction of being in versus out. And so that small nucleus of people who even succeeded from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s is a very closed, small clique. And a lot of people that are even beyond their days are still holding a strong grip on growth in Atlanta, who gets opportunities and things like that. And so if we're not thinking out of the box and creating our own economic streams and uniting, we're gonna be left out.
Yeah, or just wait for when Maxine Waters finally gets Donald Trump's tax returns.
Well, that's not an issue.
You just finally wait till she gets Donald Trump's tax returns because they're coming. One day.
Well, that's not gonna put well in our communities. And
but per Maxine, the end game is Donald Trump's tax return.
Well, we do need them.
What?
Because every president presents them.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess.
It's part of the sitting, it's part of the qualifier to sit in the Oval Office and make all kinds of decisions that also he's making without cameras rolling, that are literally rolling back legislation that was designed to help and support us and others. But, you know, that's for another day. So much. You can't cover it all. And I've got to go because I got another appointment.
Okay. And real quick, shout out to Tabitha Dorcas for the super chat. Like the caller and the topic. Everyone who super chatted, thank you. Oh, did I hit the wrong button? No, let me go back. Oh, here we go. All right. Well, go ahead and close out, Miss Jackie.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a commercial. All types of weird stuff comes on these commercials.
Okay.
Let me skip the ad. All right, go ahead.
Okay. Well, hey, everybody, it really was good sharing with you today. There's just going to be more and more coming along the lines of reparations and other things that we've talked about. We won't agree on everything, but we do need to agree on some things that can unite us, bring us together, create a national agenda for the African American community regarding reparations and many other things. I say get in touch with your local or regional representative, the one who sits in Congress or the one who sits in the Senate, in the United States Senate or United States Congress, and start petitioning them around your concerns. Bring them to a state of consciousness. And how you can get in contact with me is Jackie. No, let me type it in. Jackie.Johnson at live.com. At live.com. Jackie.Johnson@live.com. And if you want to call me, you can call me on this number. I can be reached on it anywhere I am around the world. It's 202-630-2077. All right, cool. And so I just want to say that we must keep this dialogue going. There's never one total right answer for every question. We're just trying to open people's minds, put the real issues on the table, and making sure that our voice is being heard. There's a lot going on in this space and a lot of moving parts that we're trying to bring under one umbrella so that everybody can be connected and united. And I hope to be reaching out to even some people who, you know, you have differences with people, but you really, 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 we cannot let our differences continue to divide us. We really have to figure out a way to lay our swords down enough to come together, build our African American and African communities together. We are stronger together than we can ever be apart. And thank you so much for your time. And thank you, Dinus, for
No, anytime,
calling
anytime.
me and having me on your show. I was all the way in DC. I said, I'm coming down. I'll be there. And I'm so glad that I was here to share with you in person. And I just really appreciate the opportunity. And I hope that we can bridge the gaps and unite our people and move forward together as one. Ashe.
And everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you go to Search for Uhuru on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and Facebook. Like, share, subscribe. Until next time, family, Dynasty Mirror, Search for Uhuru, Miss Jackie Johnson. Peace.